there's kind of folklore around Maui about if she doesn't want you here, she'll spit you out. So a lot of people and even the idea that people aren't very nice to you for about the first 6 months because they don't assume you're gonna, but that
Yeah.
is not the case. I'm
Yeah.
not going. I haven't even left the island in 4 years.
Hello, everyone. I am Claudiu Murgan, the host of the Spiritual Inspired podcast. Just a kind reminder that these days you find us on Gnostic TV. All the latest episodes are posted there. My guest for this episode is Jonathan Hammond. Jonathan, thank you for joining me.
Aloha, everyone. It's really great to be here. Thank you, Claudiu.
Yes, so I think our first interview was about 2.5 years ago. You're preparing to leave New York for Maui. So do you have any regrets?
God, but he regrets moving to Maui. It was longer than that. I've been here almost 4 years. No, I mean, I moved. I wrote a book on Hawaiian spirituality, so it was very much. This place was very much in my heart and mind for 2 years of research and writing that book, and had come here a lot, and so it was kind of like staying on brand, in some ways, moving here. And there's kind of folklore around Maui about if she doesn't want you here, she'll spit you out. So a lot of people and even the idea that people aren't very nice to you for about the first 6 months because they don't assume you're gonna, but that is not the case. I'm not going. I haven't even left the island in 4 years. So no, I'm very happy here, and it's a real blessed place. Yeah,
That's dedication, and I know from another U.S. kahuna, or let's say elder, Hank Wesselman, that he spent time on the islands and he wrote 3 books about Hawaii knowledge and wisdom. And at the beginning, the elders look at him with caution, but in the end, they accepted him and they validated the knowledge he mentioned in the book. Did anything similar happen to you since you were there?
a lot actually. I've had the experience innumerable times. I don't live I live in a place among Hawaiians, around among the locals, not so much where the tourists are. Although I'm close to there, everyone's close to there. It was very interesting. I have received the message many times from local Hawaiians about when they hear that I've written a book on Hawaiian spirituality. I have not gotten any in East Coast reaction would be, how dare you and all the woke stuff. But the Hawaiians have been the overall message back has been thank you for caring, and even I want to read it, and then even coming back to me and saying I didn't know any of this. I didn't this place is colonized. This place is colonized, and the old shamanic Hawaiian traditions are they're largely in the hula shows at the hotels. They exist in in certain places, but it's not but it's up to certain individuals to keep it alive, because it's not something that is mainstream even among Hawaiians. Hawaiians are like every indigenous culture now. They're on their cell phones and they're looking for the next gadget, and it's actually the Westerners who are needing their medicine, who are needing the indigenous medicine, so we are tending to honor what they originally epitomized, but at the same time they're existing in this world and are needing to assimilate in their own way too. So it's complicated. It's interesting.
Yes, and I think I'm one of those in the category of I dare to write about the Hawaiian culture and the islands, because in my books, The Water Entanglement and Crystal Cloud, I do mention Hawaii and the kahunas and their traditions, and the fact that they were colonized pretty much illegally, let's say, And I mentioned their pushback at one point when the time is right to recuperate the lands, which were poisoned right now by companies like DuPont and 3M and Monsanto. And with the help of their ancestor to clean up the land and bring back all the good spirits.
Mm-hmm. And I also think it's important to name that I have done, even though I wrote a book that was more Hawaiian centric. I chose that only because the Hawaiian material pointed toward a universal shamanic paradigm that I had experienced on 4 different continents working with shamans. It's just that the Hawaiians encapsulated it in a psychological way, and I'm a bit of a psychological aficionado, you could say, but there is a universal, really universal indigenous perspective and mind and way of seeing the world that I have seen way more often than not in every culture that I've participated in, and it's things we know. It's interconnection with the land. It is a lived dynamic relationship with the natural world. It's the natural world as an extension of self. It's seeing the natural world as sacred, as sacredness being immanent in the land. It's about that the many minds of nature that we communicate with. It's about living in reciprocity with that, in humble relationship with that. It's a real reverence for our home, and a gratitude for our home, and then of course with the attunement to the many minds of nature. For indigenous mind, another mind of nature are the spirits, and that we attune to that mind as well. So that is very much the shamanic paradigm that I've seen cross culturally, and the Hawaiian version of it is just they just wrote down a kind of psychology about that mind that helps you get inside of it, but it's very universal.
Yes, and I'm glad to hear that they are also willing to share their knowledge, because it's a trend right now with North America and South America, especially Peru, Chile, USA, for the elders to share with the Westerners, which are committed to the path, that they want to serve others, and they spend 5, 10, 15 years to learn the skills of the curanderos and curanderas, and learn about the plants and how to treat everything with respect. So again, I'm glad that the Hawaiian elders are also inclined to go the same path.
Yeah, there's something called traditional ecological knowledge, TEK, and that is knowledge. And that's not just the knowledge of the scientific or biological components of the land. That is about the personality of the land, what it needs, the spirits that live there, how to be energetically harmonious and congruent, and live in relationship with the land. And that traditional ecological knowledge is that too is a part of all indigenous cultures, and it's largely been ignored by the West as knowledge. The hallmark of indigenous mind is self-aware. I'm aware that I'm a separate self, and also collectively aware equally. Self-aware and collectively aware equally. And when the West has come to these cultures and taken them over, one of the legitimizing factors about why they think they can do that is because they saw the indigenous people and they said, you can't tell the difference between yourself and the environment. How can you govern yourself? As opposed to, I am meeting someone with an enlightened perspective that I could learn from, which of course is what we hope to honor them with creating in ourselves now.
Yes, with the same mindset when the conquistadors went to South America and they found the gold, they didn't appreciate the finesse and the artwork of the golden objects. They just melted everything to send it back home as a trophy. So they didn't have that understanding, that awareness of what these guys have been able to achieve, while at the same time they were called primitive.
And why is this important? Why are we even talking about this? Because I think we have to look at that we have had about 2,500 years of a systematic separation from the natural world. We humans exist in a human culture, which is separate from nature. And that separation, which really began to really ramp up about 2,500 years ago, has been the root of what has made us sick, the separation between each other, our dominion over women and minorities, systems of hierarchy and domination. That all really began with the idea that nature, the natural world, is a storehouse of resources for us, a background for us to play out our human drama, and with human-centeredness being the most important thing, and that is not indigenous mind. Indigenous mind is we humans too are beings of nature, and that we are not separate from it. We are in collaboration with it. And if we could return to that, and by returning to it, part of it is just about re-enchanting ourselves with the aliveness out there, with the many minds. There's all kinds of studies now about plant sentience and plants having the five senses just like we do.
Yep.
And the birds are looking back at you too. And the agency of everything in nature, everything moving towards purpose, everything in symbiotic communication with everything else, and we've taken ourselves out of that. And of course, the planet is now in trouble because we've done that. And so the return to that is a return to an enchantment with the natural world, and a sense that this is our home. What I don't understand about the kind of new age is this idea of these post-apocalyptic consciousnesses that we're going to float away in. I don't know where we're going. Our home is here, and to recalibrate our relationship with our home is the way home. And so that's the reason why I go so ecology with my spirituality, and that's because the idea being that even the spirits, the spiritual realms, the ascended masters, they come from Earth. Yes. And so that's just a really important return that we all need to make.
Yes, and I think this mentality of me was exacerbated by the religious dogma from the Bible. It says, take dominion over such and such and such. And because God didn't give us more details, we interpreted that statement any way we wanted. And indigenous people didn't get the same Bible. They got a different type of statement and energy, and they knew how to handle their relationship with nature.
And Genesis did not do us any favors. Dominion over nature and subdue it. And even if you go back 300 years before that, Aristotle and Plato were talking about a rational human soul and a sort of dead, mechanistic animal soul. And so the background of our Western philosophy, those great thinkers were already pushing the idea of human-centeredness, of anthropocentrism, the idea that of human-centeredness, humanity as the peak identity. And then, of course, 300 years later, 400 years later, the Bible, the people who wrote the Bible, picked up on that and turned it into religious doctrine, humans as the peak identity. And we are still culturally following certain humans as the peak identity. Yes. And that all comes from, I don't want to do too much Christian bashing, but that all comes from from that. Yeah.
Yes. Jonathan, how was your shamanic practice and experience enhanced by you moving to Hawaii?
More just more time in nature, more connection in nature. That was certainly a big thing. It was also a sense that that it's one thing to know something theoretically, and it's another thing to go there and go, oh, I actually do know this. I actually do know this. I actually this is resonating in the same way. It sort of took my shamanic understanding away from the theoretical and into the lived. And it wasn't that much of a change because I was pretty much on it. And oddly, with Hawaii, my book on the Hawaiian shamanism, it's very light. It's very upper world. It's very, it's got that. And when I got here, the last thing that I would have expected is that I go dark. And by dark, I don't mean negative dark. I mean into really the feminine, the intuitive, the unconscious. My book, my book is so much about manifestation and focus and attention and creating the life you want and using these Hawaiian principles to do that, all under the umbrella of aloha and power and all that. And I spent the last 3 years really, some of it being a reaction to what I see in the world, but really, and what's going on in the world in that human culture. But I really went a little bit dark and really had to recognize that you don't throw love and light at a narcissist. You don't throw love and light at a sociopath. You get away from them or you try to bind them in some way. And that we have to, as spiritual leaders and some of us activists, and that's not really me, but it's a lot of people who are spiritually minded, we have to actually call out truth to power. And we have to actually name and meet them at the level of which they are perpetuating harm, not to harm them back, but to actually meet them and say, I recognize this darkness and I am not trying to bypass it in some way. And I am not holding you in unconditional love, you who are poisoning the planet, you who are perpetuating harm. I am looking at you with disdain. Mm-hmm. And I think we have to allow, as spiritual seekers, we have to allow ourselves those dark colors, not to be negative or anything like that, but just to name and be with what it is that we're confronting. Otherwise, we're bypassing it in some way. So that was an odd thing that happened when I moved to Hawaii. That really that took form as well.
Yes, very interesting. And since then, are you involving any local elders into your retreats and ceremonies, or you are still doing everything on your own?
I'm still pretty much doing everything on my own. I mean, I have my teacher. I've always had my teachers. I have my teacher on the Big Island, and yeah, it's more about for me here serving the island. I have a pay what you can policy for any Hawaiian that would ask, with no questions asked. And honestly, it's about my upstairs neighbor is he's a native Hawaiian. He's lived here his whole life and lived on Maui his whole life. And when I first got here, we became friends very early on. I said, well, how do I fit in? What do I need to do to and he said, oh, you just have to not be a dick. Just don't be a dick. And what he really meant was smile and tip well and show up and care and say thank you and appreciate. I live in a place where 2 hours of the day you can't go to the bank because that's reserved for the grandmothers and the grandfathers. I live in a place where when I bought my furniture, I received a handwritten letter from the person who sold it to me saying thank you. I live in a place where you call up customer service and someone picks up and says, hello, Jonathan. And to be in that, even the idea of, the word of aloha, which we know to mean hello and goodbye, but aloha, if you break down that word, it means to share life force, to share joy with someone. And so aloe means face to face. Ha means breath or life force. Oha means joy, to share face to face joy, life force. And another sort of ethic or adage on the island is a phrase called Malamaka Aina, which means to love the land as you would a sibling or a parent. And the idea that you hold the idea that I love this place, and then you go greet someone with with an intention to share joy. It's a different energy, and it's being lost. It's I don't want to be Pollyanna about it either. It's something that because there's still road rage and all kind of racism and all kinds of every other thing. But that's the ideal, and that's very much how I try to show up here.
Yeah, so I assume again, as you said, that the life, the rhythm of life is different there, not as crazy as in the US or in Europe or in any other big city, just because again people are much more connected to nature. And Jonathan, I recently read a story about Hawaii having, in the past, many thousands years ago, big stones into which people will put their energy that will move into the energy of the land. And over time, due to volcanoes and everything else, they are buried under lava. Have you heard that story, and do you feel that energy to this day?
Well, I definitely feel that energy to this day. Uh, I step back and I humans have had enough influence on the land. It's more that I'm not interested so much in excavating human transmission of energy with the land. It's more about what the land is telling me about me, you know. And so I haven't exactly heard that story, but you can, it's unmistakable here when you come here that there is a sense that the, and I think there are a lot of geographies like this, but there's definitely a sense that it's very alive, that it's very spiritually alive, that in the Hawaiian tradition we don't think of the moon goddess Hina. When we see the moon, there's Hina. We don't think of Lono as the god of the clouds. When we see the clouds, there's Lono. We don't think of Pele as the goddess of the volcano. When we see the lava, that's Pele. It's there is a rapport with the metaphysical that is very much embedded, and you pick that up, you feel that.
Yes. And because you mentioned the spirits, have you encountered Pele or any other spirit of the land when you walked around and look for solitude?
Oh, yeah, spirits all the time. I mean, yeah, there are a specific kind of bird that only shows up when I'm angsty about something, and I get a ton of them, at one time to tell me that to reassure me. Yeah, and I've relationship with some lizards on my lanai and all of that, but yeah, the it's very and certainly turtle, which is very much a part of my a part of my whole shamanic life and understanding, and my ally is something that shows up at very specific times. I do I do divination with the waves. So when I'm looking for an answer, if the wave slaps me upside the head, that's an answer. If it's gentle, that's an answer. Yeah, there's all kinds of ways to work with to work with nature. Nature is alive and sentient and wants to communicate with us.
Beautiful. And do you have a special place where you go to find the answers and recharge your energy on the island? I mean.
I mean, there's really too many to name. There's really too many to name. There's what's great, if you come to Hawaii and you hang out with me, it's like I'll take you to all the places that you would never see, but there are just really so many. And it's also about just where you're called that day, and also even the idea of what the wind is doing, and being able to attune to that. And I've never had such a relationship with clouds and wind, but these are things that are daily considerations. So yeah.
So what
And
type of
for the people listening, you can find your own version of this. You don't have to go, get an expensive plane ticket and an expensive hotel to come here. There are all kinds of ways to attune to nature. I often share that if you take a walk in the forest under the belief, with the belief that forest will give you an answer to a question that you have, and you enter the forest with that belief, the forest will start talking. If you walk through the forest without that belief, it's a walk in the forest. So
yes.
attuned to that, open to that.
Yes, yes. Thank you for giving that suggestion. Jonathan, do you think and feel that you are being shielded from the energy of what's going on in the world by the energy of Maui?
No, no. We are there's only one organism. The Gaia theory says that the earth behaves like one organism, and each individual being on that earth contribute to the health of the one organism. And so no, we are not separate. I live 20 miles away from an ecological disaster. The Lahaina fires happened a year ago. And those were about fire and air and a little bit of human error, and winds from a hurricane of 600 miles away that were so strong that a firefighter friend of mine said, imagine a 50-foot vertical flame turning horizontal and being pushed. Its entire town burned. And that is people will tell you it's the conspiracy theories and all of that. We cannot agree on this, but that is climate change. That is what is happening. That's not manufactured by the government. That's not Chinese laser beams. That is, or anything else that I've heard, aliens. That is climate change. And so no, it's absolutely here. And in some way, because it's such a delicate ecosystem, I live 30-second drive from the beach. Because it's such a delicate ecosystem, I feel even more vulnerable to it. And when I think of legislators who have a direct impact on whether or not they care about the environment, or not, and of course, chances are if they don't care about the environment, they don't care about people either. But no, I do not feel shielded from that too. I feel favored by the spirits because of how I show up in the world and what I do for a living. Not special, just collegial with them because I'm working with them all the time. But no, I think part of the thing we all have to acknowledge is that we're either going to recognize that we are that separation is merely a useful illusion.
Yes.
And we, if we were to start to recognize that, we would take care of each other and our lives and our planet and our health and our own selves in a different way.
Yes, you're right. Jonathan, let's get a bit deeper into what type of ceremonies do you offer these days?
Healing ceremonies. I work almost exclusively one-on-one with people. That's what I do for a living. It can look a little bit like psychotherapy, except that we're considering energy, chakras, spirit, ancestral imprints, soul contracts, et cetera. Like I'm really looking at a transpersonal model, meaning not just the personal, but that which is beyond the personal. So that's kind of what I do for a living. In that, there are healing practices. There are all kinds of ceremonies around working with energy, cutting energetic cords, soul retrieval. These are all And the reason why I say ceremony, I think you say ceremony, is that the things that need healing in any of us are held in the unconscious mind, and ceremony speaks to the unconscious mind. It says to the unconscious mind, we're making a change for you, unconscious mind, to memorize. We're providing you with a new pattern to memorize. And once the unconscious mind memorizes a new pattern, that it brings that new reality into being. And so the unconscious mind speaks in ceremony. So when we hold someone in that, it's kind of like think of a wedding ceremony. The symbol of the ring says that we are now something else 10 minutes later, and there's a new pattern being memorized in the unconscious mind, and that everyone buys, and then a new entity takes shape. So that's how I think of ceremony. That's how I think of healing ceremonies. And I've done a couple weddings here too, which are fun.
Nice. And do you incorporate any local sacred plant medicine?
You know what? I'm so out there. I had my stint with the ayahuasca 20 years ago. I just took a training in facilitation of psilocybin, which I did because I wanted to understand it, but I can count the amount of times that I've done it on one hand. Plant medicine is amazing, but my work is more about, let's prepare you so that the plant medicine is actually effective, and then let's integrate whatever it is that you learn. I do not believe that when they say this, ayahuasca is 10 years of psychotherapy. No, it's not. The ayahuasca will open you to something when you have a sense of where it is that you're going, what it is that you want to create. You already have an attunement with spirit, and again, I think that that's really, really, really helpful stuff. But I'm so out there that that I don't want to go nutty. I don't want to go nutty. I'm already pretty connected. Yeah.
And staying on the same subject, do you feel like this year and for the remaining of the year or next, or let's say near future, are you going to add any more tools, spiritual tools, to your toolbox?
I'm going to write a book. I mean, I just did a program on the Shift Network called Rewilding Your Psyche, which was about essentially how we adopt indigenous mind, how we pull ourselves away from a Western materialistic psychology and into the psychology of animism that sees the natural world as alive and communicatable with us and filled with spirit and minds, etc. And that was a huge undertaking, and it was 7 weeks. It was I probably wrote 70,000 words already, and I sort of wrote it with the idea that a book is coming. So I think that's really the next thing. My healing practice is very full. It's ongoing. And I feel like it's working, and I feel like I have what I need with that. It's more about what I learn from my clients and the universal paradigms and blocks and subject matter that they all tend to struggle with. I see a lot of patterns in my healing practice. And to take that and put that forth in a book feels like that's sort of my next thing.
So towards the beginning of the interview, you mentioned narcissism and psychopaths and things like this, which are kind of mental diseases or mental disorders. Is there any common denominator in your healing practices, let's say in the last 4 years since you moved to the island? Is something that let's say jumped out of you and you really have to address pretty much on a weekly basis?
Well, certainly not. So I'm not getting narcissists and sociopaths. and just to name that, there's another word for it, an indigenous word, a Cherokee word, called Wetiko, the Wetiko virus, which is, a parasite of the mind, born of greed and separation. And this parasite of the mind, according to the people who think of that virus of the mind, is a self-cannibalizing one. And what they saw was that the West that came to colonize them were infected with it, and it's a real sickness, and it eats its host, and so that's a more indigenous word for it, but that's there. No, with clients, what I see is that how do they live authentically, at the same time invest in and play in a human culture that doesn't have an interest in them living authentically. It has an interest in their obedience, and in their accepting where they fit in the hierarchy, and accepting that they are to give their soul and their spirit to someone else's dream, and which of course is the opposite of what we do when we've really done healing on ourselves. So how do we unplug from that sick culture that does not have our best interest at heart, that does not have our authenticity at heart? That's why the religions of that culture cut us off at the waist, so that pleasure for its own sake is delegitimized, because the more that we are not attuned to our pleasure, the better little workers we become. And so it's about unplugging from that culture, and finding a way to be and express oneself in the world that comes out of you, not out of the dictates of something outside of you. That is the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing and that's a process. That's a real process. But that's the biggest dynamic I see.
Yes, I agree that this work is very important to finally realize who we really are, and be ourselves and find our voice, and pretty much tell the world that we have arrived, but not from a materialistic point of view, from a spiritual one.
Yeah. I mean, and all there's so many indigenous prophecies about this time. The Mayan, the Quechua, the Kali Yuga, even Jung talked about the age of Aquarius beginning a couple Decembers ago. That this is a time when things will get very dark. Things will get very dark. Things will be very separated, very polarized, ending the Piscean age, 2,000 years of polarization, good, bad, black, white, good, evil, Trump, Harris, all that, and that there would be this time that really began about 75 years ago, and would continue on now for the next 2,000 years toward unity. The rainbow prophecy of the Hopi. There are a bunch of them, and anyone who's certainly listening to this, that at this time the prophecies talk about that there would be these beings of light, these beings, these empathic beings who want to help usher in the new consciousness, and that they would incarnate in vast numbers and come from different corners of the globe in different colors. That's what the rainbow means, in order to usher in this new consciousness. And we're there. And if you think you're that, because you could feel that you're that. And I think so much of what's needed in our spiritual community is a sense of ownership, individual ownership, that I am that, and that is actually real. Because we can feel it. We can feel that there's this darkness, and then there is this new consciousness forming, and the new consciousness is not spiritual highfalutin. It's just love and interconnection, and humility and kindness, and ecological mindedness, and etc. It's just a return. It's just a return. I don't know that it's that much new, except that maybe we add our technology, which is amazing and could make us amazing janitors for this planet. If we used it for that, And certainly everyone listening, you are that. You are that.
Yes, I think we all can feel that the pressure is building up, especially for the next 2, 3 weeks until the elections. And I think this interview will be released after, sometime in November. So by that time, the waters hopefully are much calmer, and the pressure will be released, and we know where we stand in terms of future, and who will come on top in the end.
Yeah, yeah. I think that we'll know. I'm not going to make a prediction, except to say that the old way is not working, and those who are still profiting off the old way are clinging like hell to make sure it doesn't change, and lying like hell to make sure that it doesn't change. And I think that there is a new thing emerging, and I think, and I will say this: whoever is elected, that the people who are the solutions, they already exist, and they're under 40, and they're not in power.
Yes.
And they are epitomized as by the culture as lazy and entitled. And they're not lazy and entitled. They're just demonized because they're the ones who will change. It's not going to be me. All I can do is support them, but they're already here. They're already here. The solution is already here. And if anyone can do anything to empower a young person who came in ecologically minded without being taught that, who came in going, this doesn't feel right, who came in going, this work life home life balance is this seems weird, who came in saying, I don't know that I'm gay or straight, maybe I'm a little of both. Those people are they're the new energy. They're the new energy.
Yes, I agree that both human resources and technologies are here already, are not being used. And those you mentioned that they are lying, they are desperate, and their desperation is very visible these days. They don't try to hide it anymore. And those who are still not decided what to believe will very soon have a shock that will jolt them into the right direction.
I think so. I think
Yeah.
so.
Jonathan, if you have the chance to give humanity a gift other than what you are offering these days, what would that gift be?
That everyone recognize that they have work to do, and to be in some sort of a therapeutic process, and that we're supposed to self-regulate. We're supposed to feel our feelings. We're supposed to feel empowered in ourselves. We're supposed to understand what it is that we like and we don't like, and follow suit with those preferences. The gift is that you get to, through choice, take responsibility for this precious opportunity to live life on Earth. That Gaia theory that I talked about, the Earth is one organism, that was created by a NASA scientist who was studying other planets around us and concluded that those planets were essentially dead, that life seems to be conducive here. And where there is life, there is consciousness. And so that is here and available to you. And do what you need to do to show up for it, as well as you possibly can. And if you are there, help others do that too. What the hell else are you going to do with yourself?
Yes, we have to put some offer into our life and make it useful for ourselves and for those around us. Jonathan, what's your perception of God or spirit?
It's too big of a question because I think of two. I think there's the goddess and there's the god. The goddess is everything that is and everything that isn't, meaning everything that's hidden. There is a whole hidden reality. There's an unconscious reality. and the God is everything that is. Another way to say it is that the God is the sun, the goddess is the moon and the earth. There's just ways to think of it. But it's those two polarities, the light shining on that which is shined on, that which receives the light. And that which receives the light gives birth to the light, back to the light, and shows the light what it is. And so that's sort of how I tend to. Now you can organize that as different spirit guides or different creator guides. But I will say that that it is that when I think of God, I think of like the way in which I was created, that it began with a goddess. And because the goddess is that which is creating, giving birth to,
Yes.
giving birth. So that's a fundamental difference. Again, pulling away from the culture, which says that somehow the thing that doesn't give birth made it. No, it helped. It helped, but it was her. We are of her. We are all of her.
Yes, thank you. And for those who want to reach out, they can go to jonathanhammond.com. Any other website that should check, or that's the only?
That's the easiest one, jonathanhammond.com. If you put in Jonathan Shaman Maui, I'll come up. Not that I call myself that, but the internet does. But you'll find me there. So that's the easiest way. Yeah.
Thank you. And as we are approaching the end of the interview, any final thoughts?
Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Focus on do not focus on fear. Focus on where you want things to go. There's something called thought forms, and thought forms are when we give clout and legitimacy and time and attention to something. Racism, homophobia, all these things are thought forms. They have become entities. So to contribute to thought forms that become entities that are leading us toward where we want to go. And that's with our focus and attention.
Perfect. Thank you very much for all your work and the goodness you bring in the world. Much love.
Thank you. Aloha.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And to my viewers, thank you for watching. Visit spiritualinspired.ca and gnostic.com. And until next time, love and gratitude.